Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show, where this week we're super excited and defensive coaches. I told you we would get going with some defensive stuff. Really excited to have Coach Chris Semore from North Creek High School in Bothell, Washington. Coach Semore I coached with at Post and Butte, has a long history on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, has had some record-breaking passing offenses, been a coach for many, many years, comes from a coaching family, done some great things in multiple states. So we're super excited to have him on the show today. But before we get going into our topic at hand, I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show is sponsored by School Funder. School Funder, the only online fundraising company in America that lets you keep all of the money your team raises. You wouldn't give away 20% of the wins your team earns. Why give away 20% of their proceeds? And that's exactly what would happen with many other companies. We used School Funder last year for a fundraiser that we did in a few short weeks, raised $12,000, and we're going to keep virtually all of that minus the small 3% processing fee. So do me a favor, head on over to schoolfunder.org. That's SCHOOLFUNDR.org, and let them know that the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show sent you. It would help the show, and we appreciate it. And while you're doing that, go down there on the little button, push like and subscribe. It's absolutely free, and it helps us reach more coaches as we're trying to grow the show here. And we're going to get into the topic here, but first, I'm going to take 1 second. I was going to talk about this with Coach Brusso because he convinced me, took the day trip. Can't afford, I'm a teacher and football coach like probably all of you listening, so I couldn't afford WrestleMania tickets to the actual show. I did go in 2010 when it was in Phoenix, but one of our guys that played here wrestled WrestleMania weekend. He's in the NXT roster. Nico Vance headed down, so we flew down to Vegas for the kind of like the Super Bowl experience, but for pro wrestling. And let me tell you, I fanboyed out like crazy. It was absolutely awesome. Sat there and watched Pat McAfee's show, and also got to watch one of our former wrestlers get a big victory in a tag team match there. And let me tell you what, if you have never been ringside, those are some big, strong, physical dudes. I'm telling you what, it is really, really impressive when you get down there just to see the level of athleticism and stuff that goes into those matches and different stuff like that. So anyhow, I just wanted to throw that out there before we get into talking to Coach Semore. Coach, before we get into the schematic part of the show, let's take a moment. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your football story?
Oh, man, this is a long story. Let's see. Well, in the playing days, I went to high school, Ganado, Arizona, up on the Navajo reservation. Played my high school ball there. Played my college ball at Adams State College, now Adams State University in Alamosa, Colorado. And then 2005, I jumped into coaching. Started coaching with my dad over at Round Valley High School, and then went back to finish my degree at Adams State. I coached there for a year and a half. Coached running backs there for a year and a half, and then jumped back into the high school ranks back at Round Valley and got my first teaching job there at Round Valley Middle School. And then made the move to Washington. My wife's from Washington, and so moved up here and coached 5 years at Everett High, and then decided it was time to make a change and moved back down to the Valley. And Paul Morrow hired me on at Post and Butte and coached with him for a year until he moved on, and then coached with you while you were there, and then finished out my time at Post and Butte with Dane Thompson, who just recently retired. And then I thought it might be time to jump into the head coaching ranks, and got my first head job at Vista Grande over in Casa Grande. And I was there for 3 years, and then moved on and was a defensive coordinator at Arizona College Prep for Myron Bluford. And then the wife decided it was time to come back home, and we made the move back to Washington. And I've been coaching at North Creek for this will be my third season there as a defensive coordinator. So it's been this will be year 20 coaching ball. So it's been a long journey to this point.
Well, I always enjoyed coaching with you because you were always a guy that was really eager in learning and doing different stuff, and you had such an incredible knowledge base as it is. I know you spent a lot of time both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Let me ask you this because I like to ask anytime, most of the time we have obviously coaches from Arizona on the show. Have you noticed anything different from state to state? Because there are certain states that have a little bit more of this, that, or the other. You know, I was watching a clinic the other day and they were talking about RPO stuff. And I got to tell you, in the 4A Grand Canyon, I'm not sure I saw an RPO last year. So I maybe I'm missing it, but tell us about that.
I mean, I think high school ball is high school ball, no matter where you go. The smaller schools, you probably tend to see more of the traditional football, more wing T stuff, more, not as much RPO stuff, just because of the time you have, and you got a bunch of two-way players. And up here, it's kind of that way. We don't have the huge schools, school numbers that you do down in the valley. We're in the biggest classification, and we're, probably right around 1,500 students. So our schools aren't as big, which means our teams aren't as big. And we don't have the numbers. We see a little bit of RPO stuff. Um, for the most part, we're going to see, people try to spread us out or run the ball. We got a couple of teams that are true air raid that are going to throw it a majority of the time. And then, we see some wing T stuff, not very much wing T stuff, but we see a little bit of it. So I think it's kind of like everywhere, unless you're at a big school where you can one way guys and you have, and you've got a quarterback that's a dude, it's kind of hard to RPO things, and so we see a little bit. We don't see a lot, but we got one or two teams that try to do it. They're not great at it, but they try to do it anyway. So I think the biggest difference between here and down there is just the number of talented guys. And the valley's loaded. They're loaded with dudes. And up here we got a couple, but nothing like down there, especially at the quarterback position. It seems like everybody down in the valley's got a quarterback that can flat spin it, and up here we just don't have the numbers like that.
So let me ask you, Coach, as like I said, you've had an extensive experience on both sides of the ball. What have you noticed different defensively from a personnel perspective? Obviously, that's one of the most challenging aspects I would say about being a high school defensive coordinator. And I would argue maybe even more challenging than some of the higher levels because you just said you're going to see a wing T team, then you're going to see an air raid team. I'll
Right.
assure you that those guys at the D1 level are not seeing a wing T team
Oh,
on the schedule.
100%.
They've got kind of a homogenized system, I would say, that everybody is sort of in the same realm of
Right.
running.
Everyone's kind of running the same thing, really.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's challenging, but that's what makes it fun. I mean, one week we're going to see, 11, 12 personnel running power, two back runs. The next week we're going to see 10 personnel with the air raid. Later on in the season, we're going to see a true wing T. And so that keeps it fun, where you're not just, okay, well, we're going to get the same thing this week. Our plan's not going to change a whole lot. We might adjust blitz packages based on down and distance, but, going in, our base stuff is not going to change, whereas, you're going to see something new every week. Your base stuff is going to change somewhat. And then, your third down packages are going to be a little bit different and all those things. So it adds a little bit of variety to it. And for us, because, we're in the same boat as everybody else, all of our guys are two-way guys, even our linemen, we can't get overly complicated with it. But we can throw some wrinkles in now and then to kind of give different looks and stuff like that. And just based on what we're going to see that week and tendencies and all that stuff we get on tape and stuff like that. But I think the variety of offenses that we see makes it fun as a coach, but it makes it more difficult, to try to put in a new game plan where you're essentially adjusting your entire defense in 3 days. for us, it helps. We have some smart kids. We got some really smart kids, which allows us to do a little bit more. Um, we're gonna be young. We graduated 8 starters off our defense last year, so we're gonna be super young, which is gonna limit us a little bit as we start the season. Um, but we'll be able to build into some more stuff as we go throughout the year. But it's going to be a lot of base defense to start the year for sure.
One of the things I found interesting in talking to various coaches, and certainly I've always been in the belief there's a lot of different ways to do things, a lot of different ways to be successful. I think if guys think their way is the only way, they're probably missing the boat a little bit. Because there's guys that have made this. I see some of these guys in Texas. They got 9 coverages, 10 coverages, whatever. I'll be totally honest, and there's teams watching ours. We're going to play 1, maybe 2. We might play 2 coverages, and I don't. I think that probably depends on the league you're in. But how many coverages do you carry in actual football? Now, we'll probably have 3 or 4 that we'll work on in 7-on-7. But
we run 3 different coverages. We'll run cover 3, we'll run quarters, and we'll play man. That's it. I mean, we don't need any more than that. We're not seeing complicated pass games and concepts and all that. We'll try to match a little bit out of our quarters, but with as much as we zone pressure and all that, we're running a lot of 1 high safety a lot of the time. I mean, and we'll run some quarter stuff in long yardage, and our base front is a 2 high quarters look, but we're blitzing quite a bit of the time. So, we're in a lot of 1 high stuff mostly. I mean, playing man or cover 3, and we don't need anything else than that, really.
lean myself towards that line of thinking. I watched Brian Ward at the Glazier Clinic, ASU's defensive coordinator this year, and he talked about getting fired from Syracuse, and he thought one of the main reasons was he got away from being almost exclusively 1 high and started doing some of the match stuff. And he said we didn't teach it as well, and we struggled with it a little bit. He was always have been a 1 high guy, whether you've always been a 2 high guy or whatever. I think it's probably important to coach what you know and get better at those things as the year goes on. I know this past year we had a good season, and we had our quarterback also played free safety for us, and he was just signed with New Mexico to play college basketball at the state in scoring. And we just played man and had him. We played cover 1 and had him over the top and said,
Absolutely,
make us right if somebody gets beat deep. And he did. He covered a lot of ground back there, and I felt really, really good if we were just in cover 1, because even if we got beat, he was going to probably make us right. Definitely was going to make us right on any ball inside the hash.
right.
On the sideline, maybe not, but on a lot of that other stuff, it was comforting to know he was back there. But next question I always like asking is practice plan wise. What do you need to get in? Walk us through a typical defensive practice plan, both in terms of an install, like from spring, fall camp perspective, to possibly a game week type of situation.
Sure. I mean, our head coach, he's super organized. And the unique thing about me coming in here was, we're running his defense, and he was a coach with Baltimore with the Ravens for a few years. And he was at Montana and all that before that. So the dude is super knowledgeable. And the unique thing about this situation was, I had to learn what he wanted to do. It wasn't the other way around where I was going to bring in what I wanted to do and the kids were going to learn it. The kids already knew it. So it was just it was just me coming in and trying to learn as fast as possible. And so he's super organized with our practice time. Our practices don't deviate much throughout the spring and summer and into the fall. We might change a few things here or there. Let me see. I'm pulling up our stuff. We're getting ready for spring ball now. So let's see. Let me know if this shares with you there, Cody.
Will do.
Can you see everything there?
It's coming up. Yep. Yes, sir. Can do.
Okay, so again, he's super organized with how we do things. Um, and so we have our install schedules there, where we're going to install by the time we get done with spring ball in at the end of June and get ready to head to camp, our whole defense will be installed for the most part. And it's nice that, we can have contact practices up here. So that's always nice, to where we can actually get some live looks at our stuff and get it on tape, and allows us to go through the summer, and make adjustments as we need it. But here's just kind of an example of one of our defensive practices. We'll always start with a tackle or turnover circuit, depending on the day. If it's a tackling circuit on one defensive day, then it's a turnover circuit the next day. And then we'll go 2 sessions of individual, which for me is needed, because I'm coaching all 4 secondary positions. And then with a break in there for special teams. So we'll break our indie time into we get 25 minutes. We'll break it into 2 segments, with a special teams period in between there. And then after our second indie time, we'll get into our trash cans, where we'll do our align assign, walkthrough type stuff. And then we'll get into 7-on-7, and we'll end with a team session. Our practices don't really deviate a lot from that. As we go throughout the year, we might get a little more situational towards the end in our team sessions, where we might do third down one day, we might do a little goal line session on another day, or we might do a 2-minute end of half scenario, when we get in the season. But before that, it's pretty much the same, as we go throughout our springtime practices. So that's kind of how we break down practice. We'll go the first 3 days. It's same as down there. We'll get 3 days in helmets, and then we'll get into pads on that 4th day. So, and then we'll go, I want to say we have, I can probably tell you right here. We have 14 practices. And so 11 of those will be padded up. And then at the end of camp, we'll head over to Central Washington for 4 days and go through their contact team camp as well. So it allows us to get some real good evaluation with the pads on, because we'll film most of our practices, and then we'll film everything at camp, and that'll give us some good stuff to evaluate going into the summer in terms of who can play and who can't. Which, going into this year, these days are going to be crucial for us to try to find some guys that can play.
Love that, Coach. And I know Arizona's been trying like heck to get that. I always wonder, because sometimes when you're the head coach and you're getting all your helmets reconditioned, it takes a while. And there's other states that did you guys get those out already? Or, I mean, obviously we've sent them out, but we haven't got our helmets back yet.
Yeah, we just got them back. We got them back a couple weeks ago. I think we're pretty fortunate. One of our wide receiver coach and our special teams coordinator, he works for a helmet company, so he can, he's pretty good about getting our stuff out and getting it back on time and all of that. So, I know some teams run into that issue for sure. When sending helmets out. Hell, I ran into it when I was at Vista. We ran into that, getting helmets back in time for August. And so we're pretty lucky that way.
That's a cool thing to have too, Coach. So let me ask you this, because I always find this interesting. What data do you guys take, and what do you think is the most valuable? And the reason I bring that up is because, and I'm probably going to get eviscerated for this. Some guys might. We take a lot of data, but the one that means the most to me is how they line up to certain formations, because I really feel like you get an idea of things when you see how they line up to various sets and where you can get a numbers advantage. The part that, and we do it, we keep the data, but I'll be honest, I don't think it's helped us as much, and there's going to be some people who tell me I'm totally full of it. And maybe it's because we're at 4A and not 6A, but
Right.
I have found the third down data at our level to not be as meaningful. And the reason primarily is there's some teams that 3rd and 7, buck sweep is still their best play on 3rd and 7.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
they have a different.
Dane Thompson's going to run buck sweep no matter what, you
Yeah.
know. And now he's going to formation the hell out of you and get a numbers advantage come hell or high water and run it, be successful with it. And but the way he ran the wing team, man, I mean, good luck. You know, um, I think a lot of times with the data, our head coach is big on data. I'm a little bit more old school, I think. I think there can be some paralysis by analysis a lot of the times when you start looking at all the data that you can get off huddle. I mean, it's just so much. Um, I want to see what they do on third down, and then I want to see formation tendencies. That's what I want to see. Are they gonna, what do they do on the hashes? That's what I look for. Mostly down and distance, because most teams, even though they self scout, and I can say this because I was an offensive coach. I was offensive coordinator long before I started coaching defense. We're gonna do what we're gonna do offensively, regardless. And every offensive coach has their go-tos on third down. Every offensive coach has their go-tos in terms of formation. And so I want to see what their favorite formations are. I want to see what they do on down and distance. And that's it. Because if we can get lined up, that's half the battle. Getting lined up to formation. You know, and then go play ball. What do they want to do out of these formations? Most teams, you're going to get 3 or 4 plays out of each formation that they like to run all the time. And then you have to adjust based on then you got to play your rules. If you get something that that you haven't seen a lot of, then you just got to play your rules and play your gap responsibilities, and then fly around, and play with great effort. And so I look a little bit at it, but I'm not going to get overly in depth into data and just start nitpicking everything, because then you're just overthinking. You're overthinking things. You're more worried about data than you are, flow of the game and how we're playing, and being able to adjust to new things, because you didn't see any data on it, and so. It's a useful tool, but I don't put all my eggs in that basket.
Completely. I do think a lot of coaches have formational tendencies. There's certain sets when they get in, this is coming. I'm
Absolutely.
not sure I've seen it quite as much down and distance wise, but formationally, I do think we've been able to pick some things and say, hey, this is coming here in this situation and different stuff like that. Well, Coach, we're going to turn over the screen to you now, and you're going to kind of coach us through some defensive concepts. I believe you were going to maybe coach us up on some zone pressures, which I always find enjoyable. But anything you're willing to share, I will ask questions as I see, something pops into my head. But I'm looking forward to learning some ball and talking some defense here. So take it
Absolutely.
over.
All right. We'll get into some huddle. We'll go through some film. You're going to see a lot of mistakes in this film. Um, you're going to see a lot of things where we miss gaps, and we're not in the right place a lot of the time. Now, saying that, we played pretty good defense this year. I mean, we were number 1 in our league in defense, and when we created a good amount of turnovers and all of that. Our biggest thing was, we were undersized, and so we had a fast defense, but we were little, and we knew kind of going in that if we played a team that was going to get in 12 personnel, or 22, and 2 backs and a tight end, and just smash us in the face downhill, we were gonna have some problems just because of our size, and so and we tried to combat that with our pressures. Let me see here. We'll start with our I call them simulated pressures, where we're bringing one guy. We're a base 3-4 defense, and so essentially we're blitzing into a 4-man front, and playing zone behind it. And so when we get into our sim pressures, we're going to play cover three behind it. No matter what, we're gonna be in one high, and we're gonna play cover three behind it. Now in the first clip, we're playing a flex bone team. They run the flex bone out of the pistol. They weren't super great. I mean, this team's not real good. So our adjustment, we ended up playing a lot of even front this year, walking down our linebacker or just bringing in another defensive lineman and playing an even front, which essentially turned into a 4-4 for us because we were going to play one high. And so this guy to the boundary, that would be our outside linebacker in the 3-4. And so when we'd go to an even front, we would just bump him down and shift our line and playing an even front. And so here we're just playing just this essential 4-4, and we're going to slant to the field. If we were in our 3-4, this guy would be blitzing off the edge to the boundary, because we knew going in that motion was going to take us to the ball 95% of the time. Whether they were going to run the veer option or whether they were going to run load and block our end and lead out with the running back and pitch here. We knew that's kind of where they were going. They had a counter off of it, but again, they weren't a very good team, so they weren't super good at it. And so here, let me see if I can get to some, because this is just a 4-4 and we're slanting. So let me see if I can get to some stuff where we're in our three-man front.
Coach, I'll tell you, that flex bone, we encountered that a few years ago when Mingus was running it. And when a team is good at it, it is a bear to stop.
Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal. We saw that on tape. I'm like, nope. Like, we need to get them off the schedule now. Because you just don't see it anymore. I mean, you don't see triple option stuff anymore. And so it's, it's just like when those guys play service academies in college, man, they struggle because they don't ever see it. And I think a lot of times, especially here with these guys, people want to just, they want to start changing the reads on the quarterback and all that. Well, this cat is not a Division I player, so don't overcomplicate it for your defense, right? You put your interior guys, they're in charge of the dive, right? Your defensive end or your outside linebackers, they hit the quarterback on every play, right? And then if you're in a too high look, your safeties are running the alley to the pitch, your corner's coming down to the pitch. I mean, don't overcomplicate it for your guys by trying to change the read on the quarterback because the dude's not good enough anyway, and so trying to exchange reads and all that for a guy that can't read, it's just a waste of time and it confuses your guys. And then you start to get big plays out of it. And so that was kind of what we wanted to do against these guys, just keep it super simple and, and not beat ourselves, by giving up big plays because we were confused. Okay. And so here against this team, this is Highline High School. They're down south, down by Tacoma, South Seattle area. They were a 10 personnel team. And this dude, he was going to run all over the place and just try to chuck it. And so here we have Texas. So we're going to bring this guy off the edge, or here's our post safety playing in the middle of the field. When we tell our post safeties, we're not going to try to line up in the middle of the formation if we have a post safety. We tell our safeties, you're going to be in the post no matter what, right? And so he's going to be the post safety. He's going to play the post, and he's not going to leave the post ever. So he's going to be our deeper than the deepest, and he's the guy, right? He's got to stay deeper than everybody. And so here we're bringing our boundary linebacker. So we're going to get a slant here. We're going to get a slant here. We're going to get a slant here. So we're going to get, God, I'm not good at using huddle.
Are you a new huddle guy or a classic?
I don't. I go back and forth. So we're going to get slant. We're going to get slant. Let's see, we're going to get slant here. And then we're going to get a slant here, and then our boundary linebacker is going to come off the edge. Okay, and so that means we're down a flat dropper to the boundary, and we're okay with that, right? We're okay with that because we'll do some things with our boundary corner to help mitigate that. Whether we're going to play press and play cover three to the field. If we get three to the field, we can always tell our boundary corner to lock that. and come up and play press to help with that flat, or if we're going to just play straight up cover three because we know the team is not going to run over here, which we get off film study and tendencies and all that, and we'll drop our mic to the flat late, right? Because if they come over and try to throw a 5-yard hitch, so what? We're going to rally up and make a tackle. I really don't care about a 5-yard hitch. I care about the boundary go route for a touchdown, in cover three. That's what I care about. So, and so we're going to bring him, we're going to bring him off the edge. Everything is slanting this way. Okay, he's slanting into the A gap. So our front side middle, our field backer, he's got the B gap, right? He's got the A gap. Okay, we're gap sound there. Okay, our field linebacker, he's more of a nickel. He's more of a safety hybrid type player. He's not a true linebacker. He's a safety that can tackle, right? And so and so we have our field flat defender here. Post safety, corners are playing their deep third as well. We get motion. We don't do a lot with motion in the zone. We just bump everything across and we're good. So they get a delay penalty. They were no huddle. I don't know how they got a delay penalty. Okay, and so here we'll go back. They're starting off 2 by 2. We're going to count this dude. He's in our count coverage wise because he's kind of outside the tackle, so we're going to count him. Okay, and so we're going to get motion to 3 by 1 to the boundary, right? And so our corner, he's got good alignment here because it's a condensed formation. He's not going to be inside of it. He's playing zone. Okay, so he's maybe a little wide. I would say more on his outside shoulder so he can run. So he might be a little wide, but he's not terrible. Okay, and then here we're playing outside leverage, okay, because he's the flat dropper, so he's going to align himself to be the flat dropper. Okay, and then he's going to carry and then get to the flat late. We're playing shuffle technique on the outside, and then we have our post safety here. Now, when we get motion to the boundary, okay, again, our safety is not going to move. He's going to stay in the post. Right, and so if this guy would have kept coming, our corner would have widened, and we're good. Okay, them keeping it a condensed formation, that kind of helps us really because there's not a lot of field over here, and so that kind of helps us. And I think we still blow it. Okay, we get a run. Okay. Our nickel, that was garbage tackling by our nickel. What's going on here?
What's your slant footwork with your D line? What are you telling them?
Okay, so I'm trying to get to the end zone cut here. So what we're telling our guys, okay, is we want to almost be flat with this step, and we want to work so we're slanting to the field, and so we want to work to this guy's hip, right? And so it's almost going to be, because our big concern is over penetration, right? Getting 3 to 4 yards upfield, right? And so we want to get to his heels and his hip. And so that's where his first step should be. It should be to his heels right there. That's where his first step should be. Same with our nose. His first step should be to the heels of that guard, right? And then with our defensive end here, he should be working to this outside shoulder so he doesn't get hooked. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Very similar to how we teach it.
And so here, he actually does a good job. He's going to slant, but this tackle disappears on him, so he's just going to start to squeeze, right? And so he does a nice job right here. They're going to try to kick out with their H. And so he does a nice job. We tell our guys we're going to try to wrong arm these pullers and try to bounce it to our guy out here that's unblocked. Come on. There we go. And then we have a garbage tackle there. Yeah, he does a nice job. This dude, he's little, but he was a heck of a football player. He's tough. He was a tough kid, He wasn't the biggest dude, but he was going to give you every bit of him. And he was hard to block. Man, he was quick. He's just not very big. our field linebacker doesn't do a great job. He gets too far over the top, and lets the tackle wall him off. He should have been straight off that tackle's butt right here, instead of getting over the top of him and letting that dude wall him off. Now our linebacker, he's way too wide to start with. That motion, there's no one else out here, so that motion should have brought him in. He should have been, we call it a hip alignment, where he's 1-by-1 off that defensive end. So he's absolutely too wide. And then at the snap, his eyes should have been on this tackle's hip, and as soon as that hip disappears, he should have been down in here. And so he's late getting there. And instead of hitting that 2 yards in the backfield, he's in space and clearly not as good an athlete as his running back, or he would have made the tackle. And so our defensive end does a good job. Linebacker, not so much, because his angle's bad. And then this guy was really bad because he didn't squeeze down like he should have. And then our safety's lazy with his footwork. He should have been he should have been pedal out and then reading this tackle, because there's only one guy over here. So now he should be in the fit, right? And so his eye should be right here. So he should be in his pedal. And as soon as this guy disappears on a down block, he should be in the fit, right? And so we should have two free runners right here, because our defensive end does a great job of taking on this pull. But we're lazy in our footwork, and we don't come down like we're supposed to. And so a tackle, something that should have been a tackle for a loss, turns into a 5-yard gain. Okay, here's our flex bone again.
Those little things make a big difference.
I'm telling you, Coach. I'm trying to get some past stuff here so we can see. Actually, I can just do that. Can I have huddle? Okay, so here's the flex bone play action, right? Our safety screwed the pooch right here. We're in a cover 3, right? We're in cover 3. Motion goes away. He's only got one guy. Essentially, he's locked. Eyes should be on this wing. That's where his eyes should be. He's the third player anyway, right? We're cover 3 here, cover 3 here, cover 3 here. Here's our flat droppers. He's a little tight. Okay, he's even a little tight if he's a flat player. And, if this guy arc releases and hooks him and they pitch the ball, we're in trouble. So he's a little tight, right? But the safety right here, he kind of screws the pooch a little bit, and he gets his eyes where they're not supposed to be. Here he comes up on the pitch. There goes the seam route. Now he makes the tackle, right? But they should have thrown the ball right to him. Damn triple option teams.
Pretty good ball for a flex ball.
Yeah, he couldn't run the option, but he could.
Winning, any play action was always open.
He could throw it a little bit. He just couldn't run the option. Let's get to.
Maybe not the best scheme then for that one.
Well, this is their second quarterback, their starter. He wasn't bad. He wasn't good, but he was better than this guy. He got hurt like first game of the season, and they were trying to roll with it. So here's a good look at it. This is a 10 personnel team. So here's a good look at it. We're going to bring our boundary linebacker. Okay, again, just a 4-man rush. Okay, our nickel, I call him a nickel. He's an outside linebacker, but he's a nickel. He's standing flat-footed in no man's land, right? He's the flat player. He's going to collision and carry 2 vertical until he gets a flat threat. Well, the guy's pushing right at him, and he's just standing, right? He's flat-footed, all that. They try to run the little tunnel screen with him. He's flat-footed, right? He should be trying to collision this guy. our defensive line, our two defensive ends, again, they were awesome against screen. They would rush and retrace on screen like crazy. Our defensive line coach did a great job with those dudes when it came to screens. So we have our blitz here. Okay, there's our safety coming down to replace, and we're going to run cover three. So our safety to the boundary, he's going to come down and replace our blitzer. There's our flat player to the boundary. So it's not complicated stuff when we run our sim pressures. I mean, we're going to replace the blitzer with a safety. We're not going to get overly complicated with it. We're going to make it easy for our guys so that they can play fast. Okay, here it is again against the 10 personnel. Okay, so against these dudes, we tell our guys if it's 3-by-1 away from you, and if you're the blitzer in this, and we call it Texas, if you're the boundary or the weak side linebacker, you're the one that's going to be blitzing, right? And so we tell them if it's 3 away from you, why disguise it? Who are you trying to fool, right? Get your butt up there and get ready to go, right? Because our safety is going to come down anyway, no matter what. And so, he's going to cut and then he's just going to go, right? He's going to come down and he's going to go, right? We're not trying to disguise anything or anything like that.
Coach, are you bumping those backers? I see your free safety still right in there in that goalpost area, but you bumping those backers?
Yeah. So, our field linebacker, he'll bump out, he'll apex number 3, and then our weak side linebacker, he'll kind of move to the middle to kind of balance up our defense a little bit, just so that we can stay balanced in our defense. It's, I think everybody does that.
Yeah.
And then that allows our weak side linebacker to push to the back if he goes to the field. So, just again, very simple.
Ball there.
Our guys, the one thing about our guys is they play hard. They play hard. They play with awesome effort. They might screw up, but they're going to play with great effort. And we had our moments, where we screwed up, like right. There's your flat foot right there. Our linebacker is walked out. He does a great job of running. He does a good job of running underneath, because he got sprint out, so he's running underneath. He does a great job. Get your butt over there. Right? We had a lot of, and he was a first-year varsity guy, so a lot of indecision. A lot of indecision on his part because he was a first-year guy. And he got better as the year went on. And so, but that's a no-brainer. It's sprint out. You're the flat defender. You got a trigger, right? But I'm okay with that because we tell our guys all the time. If they throw a 2-yard pass, so what? I don't care about a 2-yard pass. Rally up, make the tackle. All right, but with experience, he'll understand. That's the quarterback sprinting to him. With experience, he knows my linebacker's coming. Right, my linebacker's running because it's sprint out. And so, he'll, and that's just feel and experience on that part of it.
Well, high school quarterbacks are inherently greedy. They're very rarely will take those underneath stuff
absolutely.
all the way down
They want to throw the ball 40 yards down the field. They want to throw it all the way down the field. They don't want to take what's in front of them. Throw that 2-yard pass. It turns into a 40-yard game. They don't like that.
Nobody's on Sports Center for a hitch.
Right. So here it is against empty. Empty is kind of a problem for us when we get into this. Now as we go, we'll have checks and stuff to get out of this. We're outnumbered essentially in cover 3. We only have 3 deep defenders. They get 5 eligibles, right? And so what we tell our guys is if we get caught in this and empty, right? Well, now we got to be football players, right? Because essentially we're going to man this side up over here is essentially what's going to happen, right? It has to. We can't. We don't have enough guys to defend all the vertical threats. And so we're going to play cover 3 over here just like we normally do. Okay, and then he's got it now. He really, really, really has to carry number two. He can't screw around with the number two receiver. He can't just give him a little love tap and let him go. He's really got to collision this guy. And then an empty. What we tell our weak side linebacker is you gotta go. Like you can't stay in here and BS around. Right? You gotta snap your head on here and you gotta find work. But hopefully we don't get caught in this. We got caught in it right here, first game of the year. And it is what it is. See, like right out there, he's standing out there doing nothing. Our flat defender, he's out here standing around guarding nothing when he should have been carrying this vertical, right? And they shifted to it, so that that kind of threw us. But again, find work. We're playing cover three over here. Don't just let the dude run right past you. Collision the dude, right? Collision this dude. We're bringing edge pressure right there. Collision him, right? Now they got nothing. Okay, our corners do a good job staying over the top. This corner right here, he had 3 picks and they all looked like this. He just did his job in cover three. But we do a good job on this side, and then this side we had one bust, and we're lucky. We're lucky this dude, like most high school quarterbacks, he's just gonna launch it. Okay. Now the other one that we do, because we do this one, and then we'll do one where we bring our field linebacker.
Okay.
So our outside linebackers are labeled T and O. So Texas is our T linebacker. He's the boundary guy. Our O linebacker is our nickel. Essentially, he plays to the field. And so we go Texas, Oregon. And so let me see if I can find it. So here's Oregon. This one, we had some success with we had a lot of success with this one, because a lot of people don't think you're going to bring the guy off the 3 receiver side. At least where we're at. Most people are going to bring the guy away from the trips. So right here, they run fly sweep, and we blitz right into it. Here's our O linebacker to the field, and we blitz right into it, and we don't make the play. I'm struggling with this huddle. So again, we get the slant to the field from the D line. Let me get to the end zone. So we don't get a very good slant. So we should have got slant here to the hip, slant here to the hip, and then slant here to the hip and to the heels. Or actually, I'm wrong. Let me clear this up.
I was going to say, are you guys slanting to the same side the backer's coming?
We should have been slanting to the boundary. Come on now. Okay, so we should be slanting to the boundary. So he should be going here to the hip. He should be going here to his hip, to his heels, and then he should be outside of working to this outside shoulder with our O linebacker coming off this edge. So we don't get a great slant. Especially from our nose. He just kind of stands up and goes for a ride. But he's a freshman, so he'll get better.
Hey, he's playing varsity football as a freshman. That's pretty good already.
Coach,
keep rolling here. I'm going to tell our junior high guys to just hold tight. I got a group coming in, but I want to finish this up with you, so just keep rolling. I'll be back 1 second.
Got you. So our strong side linebacker, he's dropping into coverage when he should be fitting his gap. He should be fitting. Yeah, he's dropping into coverage for some reason. But we blitz right into it, take the bad angle on the blitz.
Yeah, he takes a better angle there. He's in good position. Let me ask you, when you're bringing that guy off the edge, is he always a force player? Is he going to spill it because you got a safety rolling down, or how you guys working that?
Yeah, when we bring a guy off the edge, we want to try to box it into our guys coming. Even though we have a safety coming down, we want to try to get it to this guy who should be coming downhill instead of dropping into coverage,
Okay.
and then so he should be, he should be fitting in here was what really should be happening, because if he's the B gap player, he's the A gap player, he's the A gap player, he's the B gap player, right? And so we have our C gap right here, right? But he should be fitting in here, okay? And then he should be here, everything should be going back this way. And we take a bad angle. Corner does an awful job tackling.
Always gets back to fundamentals. I mean, that's going to be a TFL if we make a tackle.
Absolutely. Like, I don't know how many times that this year that happened, where we take a bad angle on the blitz, and and TFL turns into a 10-yard gain. There's a bad angle again. He's a free runner. And then he runs upfield.
A little too far.
If he comes flat,
yep.
Yeah, if he comes flat, he hits the ball. He hits the ball at the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely.
You get in the end zone view, you're going to see our nose guard go for a round. So everybody should be slanting to the boundary. Our nose steps the wrong way and then gets his ass kicked because he stands straight up. And then our free runner off the edge runs upfield. So now we're down a gap because our nose doesn't go the right way. If our nose gets into this gap, we're in a little bit better situation, right? Because now this guard, you can't just climb to our linebacker. He's got somebody in his gap, right? And so now our linebacker can be a little bit cleaner. So when you're not gap sound, especially in a odd front, where they're already going to try to run at your bubbles anyway, and you go the wrong way, you're in trouble. So right here, everybody again should be slanting to the boundary with our guy coming off the edge. Okay, our linebacker just runs into the pile. Instead of being in his gap, he's the B gap player. We're slanting to the A. He's the B gap player. He's not in the B gap where he should be. Our defensive end doesn't close down like he should. Like he slants, and then he's got to close it back down. And then our nose guard was kind of an issue all year with him, or with our rotation. Just young guys standing straight up. Haven't learned how to play varsity football yet. That type of deal. But we have our edge rusher coming off the edge here. Again, that's a little bit better angle. He comes a little bit flatter, but it's run away. But over here on the play side is our biggest issue, right? Our linebacker doesn't fit his gap. Our defensive end slants but doesn't squeeze, right? And so now they have a big hole to run through. And then our corner was soft. The dude barely touched him, blocked him. And so a lot of mistakes on that play. Okay, we'll do one more and then we'll get into some of our sixes.
Sound from a fundamental picture.
What's that?
Just clean up. You guys can see where your sound from a fundamental picture. Just got to clean up some mistakes and different things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, these were, some of these guys are first-year varsity guys, and so, there was a lot of growing pains early with some of these new guys, learning how to play and, learning that, oh, I have to be in my gap every time. I can't just go try to do my own thing. And, like some of these guys could on JV, just run around, make plays. It doesn't work like that on the
You
varsity
get away
level. You got
with
to
a lot
be,
of stuff at that level.
yeah,
Yeah,
you got to,
no
you got to
question.
be where you're supposed to be, and so, um, we had some growing pains early, leaving our feet on the tackle, not running through guys, it's just fundamental things. Okay. So, our sim pressures are super simple. We're going to roll down into cover three. We're going to bring a guy off the edge. We're going to blitz into a 4-4, essentially. That's what we're doing. We don't overcomplicate the issue. It is what it is. We're gonna be simple. We're gonna play fast. When we get into our,
Coach,
yeah,
I was just gonna say I got my younger group coming in. I should have probably booked this for a little bit more time here. I would love to get into some of these other pressures and different things. If you want to coach that up, I'm gonna go start them if that's all right, and then I'll come in and we'll finish up if that's all right with you.
no worries.
All right, thanks a lot. So coach us up on a few of whatever you had next, and I'll be back here on screen in just a couple minutes.
All right. Okay. So this next bit, we're gonna get into our 5-man pressures, where we're gonna bring 2 linebackers, and we're gonna zone pressure these, um, and we kind of play our zone pressures, with the coverage behind it a little bit differently based on what formation it's going to be, what formation we're going to get. So essentially, if we're going to get a 2-by-2 look with our zone pressure, we're going to stay too high, and we're going to run some quarters, and we're going to match out of it. Um, and then if we get into a 3-by-1 situation, we're gonna we're gonna walk the safety down, and we're gonna play 1 high, and we'll either play man out of it, or we'll play cover 3 out of it, just based on the team. A lot of the times we're going to be in cover 3. So here against this team, we're getting, it looks like, it's hard to tell with that pole in the way. For those of you that don't know, everybody in Washington has a pole right in the middle of their screen, because everybody has bleachers that are undercover because of the rain. So that's always fun to look at on film. So we have a tight end up here. So it looks like we have some kind of 2-by-2 set here. So we're going to stay in 2 high. In this one, we're bringing both of our outside linebackers off the edge. And so we're going to play some sort of match here. And so what will happen normally, if we have a slot receiver here, okay, we're going to read first level out with our corner. Okay, if we get first level out, we're going to trigger, and he's going to be the flat defender, and our safety's going to work over the top, right? Everybody plays kind of their palms are matched that way. Okay, we play it the same way. Now, if we have a tight end, we're going to get a different call here. Okay, we're going to tell this guy he's going to lock 1. Okay, and then our safety is going to play a vertical 2, right? Because we're not going to try to match a first level out with the tight end. The distribution's too wide, and our safety will have a harder time getting over the top. And so essentially, we're going to turn this into a kind of a matchup man to man, so to speak. So we'll tell our corner lock 1, lock 1. Our safety, he's going to have vertical 2. If 2 blocks, he's going to be in the fit. Okay, same thing over on this side. If we have 1 and 2 out here, okay, we're gonna play our match here. Okay, where if we get a bubble or first level out, he's gonna match. He'll play over the top, just kind of like everyone else does. The only difference is on our linebackers are gonna play it. Um, if excuse me, when we read pass, okay, he's gonna work out and try to wall 2 and carry a vertical 2. Same on this side. He's gonna wall and carry, and that's kind of how we try to take care of verticals, and help with our underneath coverage and stuff. And so here we get a little bit of motion. Again, our safety is not playing his rules. We get a little bit of motion. Okay, it doesn't really change for us because once we make the call here, lock one, we're going to stay in it. Okay, we're not going to try to adjust on the fly and try to match on the fly. And so once we get this motion, we're sticking, right? And so he should be bumping in a little bit outside leverage because he has help inside. He should be bumping here and he should be locked on one. Okay, that means our safety is vertical two. He's got the tight end. Tight end pushes vertical, he's got him. Okay, again, eyes aren't where they need to be. Okay, his eyes are stuck in the backfield. Okay, he's widening with the run fake. Okay, because his eyes aren't where they're supposed to be, and the tight end runs right by him. Okay, now, okay, you see our boundary safety, he's starting to creep a little bit. Well, that's this team, the team we're playing, they're one of those fly sweep teams. Everything they do is fly sweep, everything's based off fly sweep, right? And so our safety, once he sees motion, he's going to start coming down for the fly sweep, right? That's just a game plan thing, okay? And so our safety's going to start to come down because he's thinking fly sweep, okay? But our safety to the front side, his eye should be right here, okay? Vertical release, I got him. It should be no big deal, right? It should be no big deal. We have our edge blitzer here, our edge blitzer here, okay? We get to the end zone cut. And so how this should look in this pressure, okay, is our defensive ends, or our tackles, whatever you want to call them, okay, they should be here. They should be pinching hard, okay? And so he's kind of, he should be pinching here to this hip, okay? Our nose, we can send our nose one way or another. Normally, we're going to send him to the field. Okay, and so our nose should be blitzing, should be here. And then our T and our O linebackers are our edge players here. And then he's not in the screen right now, but he's over here coming this way, right? And so what that does is to the field, okay, essentially that makes our strong linebacker a free runner because we're in the A gap, we're in the B gap, okay, and then he can work all the way out to C gap because we have a D gap player with a tight end, right? And then here, okay, we have a B gap player here, our weak side linebacker is the A gap player here, and then our edge rusher is the C gap player here. Okay, and so we should be.
Because that's formation to fit, I think.
It is, and with all the motion that these guys do, it's a nightmare because you got to communicate. Like there has to be so much communication going on, right? And so our safety, his eyes should be right here, right? That's his job. Like he's got vertical two, right? He's got vertical two into the run fit. Okay, well the tight end, he's not trying to hide it; he's releasing. Right? And so they're under center, so they're two back, right? That's easy, right? He's releasing. He's not going to block anybody. He's trying to run at the seam. Right, so and then he tries to widen, and there he goes. Okay, this is a different no. Right, there he goes, right by him. Right, and so again, these guys, they shifted and they motioned and they, it was crazy trying to prepare for these guys. Now they weren't very good, but with all the shifting and the motion, that's just a whole nother level of communication, right? That you don't see from most high school teams, right? You're going to get some kind of motion or you're going to get a shift, but to get a shift and a motion and all that pre-snap, every play, you don't see that a lot.
Been obsessed this offseason with Buster Faulkner over at Georgia Tech, and we're trying to implement a little bit of that. Not go quite as fast, but Georgia Tech, I'm not sure they have great talent. They have good talent. I think they're a sleeper in the ACC this year. They do some type of shift of motion on every snap virtually.
Right. And they got freaking smart kids. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They're not your normal Power 5 team with Power 5 talent. They got some dudes, but they got some smart kids, which allows them to do all that stuff, which makes it, a problem for the Miamis of the world, so here's our dog. We call it dog. Here's our dog blitz again, our edge pressure, our double edge pressure. against more of a spread look. Okay, so now we have our 3-by-1. So now in a 3-by-1, we're going to walk down and we're going to play cover 3 with one high safety, right? And so we'll give a call based on formation out of this blitz. Okay, in a 2-by-2, we're going to give a call. We're going to stay too high. We're going to play quarters. We get 3-by-1. We're going to give a call. We're going to roll down. We're going to play cover 3. And so here we have our 3-by-1. So we're going to play cover 3 with a double edge pressure. Our linebacker is going to widen with the motion. Okay, our corner was not great this game because that should have been locked up right there. Okay, anytime, essentially, we got to know, and we have a call for it. We call it peel, where he's going to carry to the hash and then peel off in cover 3. But he's playing so deep, and then he's just bailing out. He's being lazy and not playing his technique, right? He's got to drive this slant until he gets to the hash, right? He doesn't drive it. He's kind of tiptoeing in there, and and just makes it an easy access throw, right? And then our safety tries to bail him out and does a nice job. His job is over here. Our free safety, we got 3 dudes over here, so he's working here. He's thinking, well, this guy's going to take care of his job, right? He's got to trust that this dude is going to take care of his job, right? But this dude, he's a first team all league player, all that, school record holder in interceptions, that whole deal. Dude's a baller, right? And so he's gonna make us right a lot of the time. And so, he sees the quarterback looking over here, so he breaks. He just doesn't make the tackle, right? And then, being lazy turns into a big play, right? Because we're not doing our job, right? We didn't take care of our job. We didn't do what we're supposed to do. We didn't drive the slant like we're supposed to, right? If he drives the slant, even if he catches it, we make the tackle right here, right? Instead, we're being lazy. We don't break on the ball, right? We have a guy try to bail us out. He makes a bad tackle, and now big plays happen, right? Because we don't do our job. Okay, but then we get to the blitz part of it. Okay, we get to the end zone where we can look at the blitz part of it. Okay, and so again, right, we should have a pinch with our defensive ends in here into the B gap. Okay, he's lined up over the tackle. He should be coming to the B gap, right? We're going to send our nose probably to the field here because the back is away from him. Okay, and then we're going to get edge pressure here and edge pressure here. Okay, and then our run fit, our boundary linebackers into the A gap. He should be into the C gap, right? So we're going to have a wide edge. And then essentially in 10 personnel, he's a free runner because there's no one to account for him, right? And so he should be a free runner. And in his coverage responsibility, he's going to work to number 3. And so we get motion. That shouldn't change us very much. Okay, we get a bad rush from our field rusher, right? He's starting here. He should start in space and come from space, right? This is easy to block. If I line up on the line of scrimmage, right, most O-linemen can identify that pretty easy, right? The tackle can just be like, I got him and kick to him, right? He can just say, the tackle can just identify and kick, right? And identify and kick to the edge pressure instead of being out here in space and coming from space, right? And then he gives a poor effort on his rush, right? And doesn't give any kind of try to beat him with speed or kind of dip and rip or anything like that. He just kind of runs into the guy, right? And then our backside, we get some hesitation instead of running through the quarterback's face, right? And like he should be screaming like crazy. It's a full slide protection, so he's coming free. Okay, he should be coming free and running right through that dude's face, right? And again, I'm a little old school in the way I want dudes to play. Like, I know that might be a penalty, but to me, that penalty's worth it, right? To run right through that quarterback's face, right? To me, that's, as long as we're not dirty about it, hit him, right? And so that should be screaming off the edge, running right through his chest, right? Now we want his aim point to be the upfield shoulder so he can't dip and get out on us, right? But we want to run through this dude's face if we get a free run. Like this ball maybe should not have gotten off. Like he should have run right through his chest, right? And then we have the poor play in the secondary.
Coach, I want to thank you for bearing with me. I've been running back and forth here. Lots of good stuff out of the 3-4. We will definitely be having you on a future episode, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we'll get into a little more of this next time. But good luck this season, and good luck with spring ball, and we'll be talking to you soon, and we'll see you next time, another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show. Thanks for joining us.